Harvey Weinstein, the Weinstein Company, were obviously incredibly powerful. And how are you as an insurance company going to go in, and are you going to, essentially pierce that corporation and get people whose jobs are dependent upon Harvey Weinstein to tell you Harvey is sexually harassing and sexually abusing women all the time?
Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
What's the deal, everybody? This is Law Flip. It's an unfiltered conversation about law, life, politics, music, everything in between. My name is Benji Smith. We have Louis Benowitz.
Salam.
And we have our special guest host, Genie Harrison. You're a legendary victims' rights attorney. It's been 2 years since the New York Times and New Yorker investigation into the sexual misdeeds of Harvey Weinstein unleashed the Me Too movement and a courageous fury over the ways women are mistreated. We look back at the movement that has completely reshaped the way we think of men, women, sex, and power. Genie will help us dissect the Me Too movement and how it's interplayed with the legal profession. She's been involved in some extremely high-profile cases, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, and the like. So, if you get something out of this show, and I know you do, I want you to like, share, comment, say we're crazy, say Genie's inspirational, say you love Lou, you love Benji, you hate us, you love us. We just want the comments for the algorithm. So just please get out there, pause it, let's go. Let's have a great show today, guys. How horrible, Genie and Louis, is doing expense reports?
Yeah, it's almost as much fun as watching World War III unfold on the news.
I just took a nap when you said expense reports.
Okay, so get your time back, Genie and Lou, with RockPaper, the revolutionary smart payment system that empowers modern business users to create physical and virtual credit cards with programmatic spend controls. It also automates the entire expense report process for you. A limited number of Law Flip listeners can join the RockPaper beta. Go to rockpaper.com/lawflip. That's rockpaper.com/lawflip. Stop doing expense reports now and join the movement. So we have Genie Harrison here. She's a fierce advocate for victims of all forms of sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. So before we get into anything, it's a new year. Genie, what do you do to keep your mental wellness game strong?
Exercise every day. Get enough sleep every night if possible, and have a good diet. It's very basic, but it's very real. It works.
What about drinking and drugs? What do we do with that?
Zero. Ever. Never.
Why?
Because they're really unproductive, and they, I think, interfere with our well-being. I, like many other lawyers, spent probably 10 years having a few glasses of wine at the end of the day,
Sure.
which is just it's kind of part of the culture,
Or
right?
a little bit of pot.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I did that when I was a kid,
Okay.
but I don't like the feeling of just being completely zoned out.
Got it. So you engaged in what we all sort of have seen everybody doing in the law business and many other businesses. And how did you come to the determination that I'm done with this?
I found that, alcohol for me really actually exacerbates anxiety and depression. And so I didn't want to feel like that anymore. So I decided to just change everything. And I did.
What do you think is the mindset shift that you've gone through, and how do you think you've done it to yourself to go from that mentality to being a happy, content lawyer?
So I think there are a number of components. First of all, my misery previously really did have to do with the environment in which I was working, the people, and the structure of the business. So getting to the point where I had my own business and it reflects what makes me happy was very important to me. So that was illuminating.
That makes sense. And you started your own firm in 2013.
Yes.
And you started with yourself and one other lawyer, right?
Yes.
And
Amber
now,
Phillips.
How many employees do you have now?
So I have 4 full-time lawyers in addition to myself, plus 2 paralegals and an intake specialist.
And he's still growing?
Yes, probably will double the size of the firm this year.
And what do you attribute to the scaling of the firm? What do you think is the key component of scaling the firm appropriately?
Well, I think you do truly start small. And I think you if you make some conservative business decisions and you do things as you really can afford to do so, then, that makes a lot of sense to me. We, as plaintiffs' lawyers, we work on a contingency, and obviously we take a lot of risk, but it is measured risk. And I think in terms of making business decisions about growth, I may err on the side of being conservative, but I develop a tremendous amount of business, and I can, keep the lawyers busy.
How do you do it? How do you develop the business? People are sitting back there saying, there's no way that I can get enough business to support 4 lawyers and another 3 by the end of 220. How do I do that, Genie?
You start at the beginning and you try some cases, the ones that you can get, right? And you have to develop a reputation for being unafraid to go to trial. And then you start to win cases, because being a trial lawyer is a skill at base. And it also involves a tremendous amount of creativity on top of developing the skills. So I think anyone can do it as long as they try really hard. And then you get out and network and meet people. And that means not just lawyers, really, actually, more importantly, meeting people in the community and understanding what's important to you so that you target the actual business that you want.
You mentioned the skills as a trial attorney. Another skill that is not talked about enough, delegation. How have you become comfortable with delegation? Because there's no way you have that type of firm without delegating.
Being comfortable with delegation is always a struggle. But I really want less experienced lawyers to have the opportunity to do the work and to grow. And I believe that it is very important for me to provide that opportunity. It's part of giving back. So I work really hard to mentor the lawyers in my law firm and to give them the opportunities to develop the skills themselves. So as much as I want to be doing the depositions,
Right.
as much as I want to be doing the argument, I have to let them do it so that they can grow.
And that goes to like the business model. So when did you actually start focusing, and how did you focus on actually building a business model?
I was convinced to start my own firm by my husband. I then decided that I was going to do the work of every single aspect, every single position, job, and job duty in my firm. So I learned it, and from the ground up. And that includes QuickBooks, which is the worst part of practicing law.
Sure.
Then I realized I learned from actually running the business what I needed to focus on and how to hone in more on the cases that I want, that I know will suit my business, and target those in marketing.
How do you deal with cases that come in that you just can't handle?
I have a very specific process for the potential clients and the intakes. And I figure out, first of all, is this the kind of case that is the right kind of case for my firm? If it's not, then I have a network of people to whom I will refer the cases. And we keep track of those, and we try to assist with the referrals and getting them the information that they need. And then I do have a very specific business model for the cases that I take.
And what is that?
Very low volume. And so I take a limited number of cases at any given point in time for each lawyer. That means that there are approximately 5, maybe up to 7 cases in litigation per lawyer.
Wow.
5 to 7, that's it.
Give the people at home an understanding of how many cases at certain law firms a lawyer would be handling.
Anywhere ranging between 35 to 60.
You're basically having your lawyers handle 10% or 15% of what some of the other law firms are handling.
Correct.
Why?
Because I'm focused on quality and not quantity. It is my personality characteristic that I want to make sure I have done my best job on everything that I do. Everything. And so as a result, I can't do my best job if I have a high volume practice.
Fair. So I got to hear you speak several times. One of the times you shared that you're a survivor of sexual abuse. How does being a survivor help you in your practice?
It has completely shaped who I am as a human being and the work that I do. So when potential clients research me, they realize that I'm one of them. And so when people have been sexually harassed or raped, they really do want to come and talk to somebody who understands and with whom they're comfortable talking about what happened to them. So I know that the victims who come to me know that I understand.
Yeah, you can't do better than that in terms of empathizing with your clients. And I think that's got to be an incredibly positive experience for the client to understand that you've gone through what they've gone through.
But this is one of the things I explain to clients when they come in, is that I don't wish the experiences on myself that I have had in terms of the victimization, because they're horrible. And likewise to my potential clients, I know that they don't wish those experiences on themselves. But we have to decide what we're going to do now. And the way I explain things is, it's like I was bitten by the spider and I became Spider Woman.
Mm.
So
taking your greatest challenge and turning it into a positive.
Absolutely. And it is the never-ending well of my power and strength.
In 100 years from now, what do you think the historical analog to the Me Too movement is going to be? What do you think it's going to be compared to? How do you think it's going to be viewed?
With the Me Too movement, the positives have certainly been that, victims feel more confident about coming forward, especially when there are other victims who are coming forward, or especially when a victim knows that there are other victims out there and that the bad person is continuing the conduct. That is a key factor driving people to come forward, is they don't want it to happen to somebody else.
Do you think, Lou, do you have any thoughts on other positives that have come out of the Me Too movement?
Probably a deterrent effect. If nothing else, someone who might be inclined to engage in bad conduct sees the consequences of doing it and is more likely to exercise self-control, at least in some circumstances.
Arguably one of the most powerful guys in the entertainment business, Harvey Weinstein, who is now reduced to a pathetic
on
loser.
trial right
now. But like the visual of seeing him do the bullshit, like walking into the courthouse with the cane thing, like,
with
Bill
a walker
Cosby
now.
With a walker. I mean, that is an equaling of the playing field that came as a result of the Me Too movement. So I think the PR equals out the playing field. Anything else you have?
Yeah, I mean, over the past couple of weeks, I was interviewed by a reporter at the LA Times, telling me that with the LAPD, the reporting of rape has decreased over the past year by about 20%.
I saw you get quoted in that article. You're out there.
And so I said, he asked me, so is that because there's less rape? I said, absolutely not. I get multiple calls every week of people telling me that they were raped and what can they now do about it, right? So rape is not changing. It is continuing. Sexual harassment is continuing, including in the workplace. I get those calls every week.
So why do you think the reporting has gone down? Or do you even, do you think that they're just trying to find statistics to support?
No, they're a small, a relatively small fraction of rape cases are ever reported, and then an even smaller fraction are ever prosecuted. And that is unchanged. And a relatively small portion of sexual harassment in employment is reported. And there probably has been an uptick in the reporting over the past couple of years, but the fear of retaliation remains. And the fact of retaliation remains. So people still are going to grapple with, what do I do about how my boss is treating me? Because I can't afford to lose this job.
That makes sense.
In addition, part of what's happening is that it has certainly been reported that men, I think about 21% of men is the recent statistic I saw, who were surveyed, said that they are now scared of hiring women because they are scared they're going to be accused of sexual harassment.
Mike Pence rule.
Yeah, ridiculous.
You can't
don't sexually harass.
Mother said don't be in the same room with women, right?
Exactly.
Any other positive impact the Me Too movement's had?
Well, there have been huge changes in the laws in California.
Talk to me.
Since 2018. I mean, we've revised the Fair Employment and Housing Act, actually clarified the Fair Employment and Housing Act's legislative intent, so that it's clear that a single incident of harassment, if it negatively impacts an employee's ability to, work, can constitute sexual harassment under the law. And the legislative pronouncement now about what sexual harassment is just makes so much more sense than the standard that we used to use, which is, was the conduct sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the terms and conditions of the working environment based on both a subjective and objective view of the events, right? And when I go and I teach, for example, at USC at law school there, or, UCLA, and I ask the students, what do you think that means? Everybody's eyes glaze over.
Right.
Right. But Government Code 12923, which is now effective as a result of the legislative efforts arising out of the Me Too movement, is very clear in its pronouncement about what sexual harassment is now.
Okay, so what do you make of the claim that lawyers are out here taking advantage of the Me Too movement, where attorneys learn of a case and they go on a marketing scheme and they use Facebook ads, 1-800 numbers to find plaintiffs, quote unquote? What do we say to that argument?
These are existing victims, so all we're doing is exposing wrongdoing that's already occurred. The fact that a wrongdoer creates a profit incentive doesn't mean it's an abuse. It means there's a need to remedy the abuse and a market for it.
Genie?
Yeah, I agree. Lawyers get criticized all the time until there's a specific case. And there's a specific individual who may have been critical of lawyers before who says, my rights were violated and I need someone to vindicate my rights.
What do you do to vet your cases to make sure that you have legitimate claims that you're bringing?
I vet cases very carefully.
How?
First, I require the potential client to fill out questionnaires. I have both a general questionnaire and a client wellness questionnaire. And I also require potential clients to provide a thorough chronology of the events. And I also require them to provide me with their phones, their electronic communications with the individual or individuals, and to provide all of the documents related to the event. And I interview them personally, and we will also talk to any witnesses. So my process is that I develop the case fully before I ever communicate with the other side. And when I take a case and sign it up, when I sign up a client, I have to already be convinced that I can make it past summary judgment.
And so we talked a little bit about Harvey Weinstein before, and I wanted to address a few things. So he's arguably, he was arguably one of the most powerful men in entertainment. And now he's on trial in New York, and charges were just brought against him in Los Angeles.
Let's bring some LA justice.
Let's bring some LA justice, baby. So we're seeing a lot of criminal cases come about where in the past maybe they wouldn't have. How do your clients, Louis and Genie, feel about the criminal cases?
I mean, what I've experienced is plaintiffs generally, some plaintiffs want vengeance in these cases and see criminal punishment as necessary. And as plaintiffs' lawyers, that's not what we're offering. All we can do is get them civil justice, which most frequently means money. That's up to prosecutors to decide the criminal consequences. There are different standards of proof. And one of those things is sometimes the wrongdoer will pay money and not go to prison. And that could be a fair outcome under our justice system. Genie. A lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree. In my experience I have one client I represent against Harvey Weinstein in a civil case who really very seriously grappled with whether or not she was going to she grappled with whether or not she really wanted to participate in having criminal charges brought on her behalf in New York. And she decided that she didn't want to because she was absolutely terrified of being named and being targeted. She's a young woman who's an actress who has a real career. So she didn't want to she didn't want to live with the consequences of being named and targeted. And so there are, however, other cases where my clients have pursued criminal charges as well. And what will happen when there's an overlay with a civil case, right, is that usually the civil case is stayed, it's put on hold pending the outcome of the criminal case. And this can take many years. I represent a girl who is now a young woman who, when she came to me, was about 13 and had been molested by her piano teacher when she was 11, actually from about 9 to 11. And the criminal case is still going on. So her civil case is still stayed. And we're talking 4 years later.
I guess justice delayed is justice denied in general, but a lot of times in these cases, it needs to be delayed, until criminal proceedings can take its place.
Right, which also adds another layer of complexity, which is as lawyers seeking civil justice, we ultimately need resources to be there to get anything for our clients. And so one potential fear in a criminal case is that it'll exhaust all the defendant's resources to compensate the victim, to where there shouldn't be a choice between should the harasser or rapist be punished versus should they compensate the victim. It shouldn't be an either or, but sometimes a reality will.
Yeah, Genie, I think I'm just from press reports, you've kind of had to deal with this with the Weinstein case, because there was just the reported settlement that Weinstein and his former company studio had to reach a $25 million deal with dozens of his accusers. And you were quoted in the New York Times in saying basically that you didn't think that there was a markedly better deal to be made. Why was there not a better deal to be made? How does that address the whole point of how the criminal process could sometimes cause, a financial issue with the defendant where there's only so much money that could be had?
Well, the financial issue is that the Weinstein Company is in bankruptcy. And after the assets of the Weinstein Company were used to pay what's called the secured creditors, meaning everybody that had, all the companies that had security against their loans and whatnot that they had given to the Weinstein Company, there was really very little left for the unsecured creditors. The unsecured creditors include the victims of Harvey Weinstein. I ended up on the unsecured creditors committee for the Weinstein Company bankruptcy and have been doing that for the past 2 years.
Right.
So I am very familiar with the reality of the fact that the Weinstein Company has nothing except for its insurance policies. Okay? And so if we want to get compensation for the victims, we have to deal with the insurance companies. Well, it should come as no surprise to you, gentlemen, that the insurers believe that they were defrauded into issuing the policies. And they were, because the prior complaints against Harvey at the Weinstein Company and Miramax before were not disclosed.
Sure.
Okay? So those insurers have declaratory relief and rescission actions. They're suing to rescind all of the insurance policies, which if I were on the juries on those cases, I would say that's right. Harvey Weinstein and the Weinstein Company lied, right, to get those policies.
Making the argument that they didn't do enough due diligence.
Well, I mean, there's that, but, there's information that was closely held.
Sure.
And, inside the company, it's not like, listen, Harvey Weinstein, the Weinstein Company were obviously incredibly powerful. And how are you as an insurance company going to go in and are you going to, essentially pierce that corporation and get people whose jobs are dependent upon Harvey Weinstein to tell you Harvey is sexually harassing and sexually abusing women all the time? It just wasn't something that people were sharing. Okay. So there's a lot of arguments to be made, but I'm sorry. You ask a question I have a lot of information about. Okay. And so at any rate, the dynamic is that the insurance companies are obviously in litigation trying to rescind those policies, declare them null and void and all of that. So the insurance money is going to go away if the cases continue to be litigated. plus they're burning policies. So all of the litigation that's ongoing in the sex abuse cases against the directors and officers in the company is, depleting the policies, because those insurance companies are having to pay the defense lawyers at the same time. Sure. So there's a very limited amount of money that is left to actually fund, a settlement for the victims. And it is depleting. It is growing smaller and smaller every day as a result of the ongoing litigation. At the same time, people ask, well, what about Harvey? Doesn't he have lots of money? Okay, if he's got it hidden away in a Swiss bank account, nobody's found it, right? And my client, Sandeep Ray Hall, was his personal assistant and opened all of his bills and helped pay his bills. He's got a regular mortgage just like anybody else, is what she explained. And the company paid for his personal expenses, including buying his underwear. All right. And these guys are super over leveraged.
I don't think anybody wanted that visual, but
it's what she told me.
No.
They're super over leveraged. And I know that also from communications with the New York Police Department, who is out investigating Harvey's, and the Weinstein Company's finances as part of a potential sort of fraud approach, right? That they were investigating. And I was told that every single one of their assets was completely overvalued and leveraged multiple times over.
It's amazing. You think somebody is so powerful, and when it really comes down to it, he's got all sorts of shenanigans behind the
kind
scenes.
of spending it as fast as he got it, right? Yeah. And leveraging everything multiple times over. And so when that entire reality is looked at, and when we've done probably close to, I think, ultimately 50 individual mediations, right? With different groups of lawyers and phone calls and formal mediations with 70 lawyers there. And we get down to what can be paid. And after that, everybody is going to continue litigating and depleting the policies and challenging them, and et cetera. And Harvey's allegedly going to file for bankruptcy. What's left for the victims?
Yeah. At some point, just like in everything else, you have to make a non-scientific decision. You're never going to know every penny that Harvey has in the world. You're making the best decision possible at the time.
On this note, what advice would you give for vetting defendants, just as you vet plaintiffs, from a plaintiff's lawyer perspective, on how to vet a defendant before investing a bunch of time and resources?
Well, sometimes, as you know, things just happen, right? And in the middle of a case, a defendant will file for bankruptcy, right? Sure. And you didn't see it coming. I didn't see the Barney's bankruptcy coming. And I had a couple cases against Barney's. Okay. Maybe I should have seen it coming, but it's not my specialty. Yeah. So in terms of vetting, I do try to make sure that if I'm going to take a case for litigation, it is likely a defendant that will be able to withstand the outcome, right? In terms of a settlement or a judgment. And we're looking online, researching what's the financial condition and what are the reports as much as possible. Obviously, we don't have a window into their P&L and their balance statement and all of those things. We don't get to look directly at their bank accounts. So we do our best to make good decisions along those lines and be thoughtful about it. But sometimes we're wrong.
Why? How do we tell our clients that the justice that we obtain from them is likely not going to result in an apology?
We just tell them. And we have to tell them. And one of the things that I usually give my client is an opportunity in kind of a role-playing scenario to tell the bad people off and tell them what they want to say to the bad people so that they have a real cathartic experience. And then I learn what it is my client wants to hear. And I try to give that to them when I'm playing the role of the bad person so that they at least have the experience of it, even though we're role playing. And then I just explain, an apology is not part of the system of justice. It's not relief that I can obtain.
That makes sense. My father, Mark Smith, he's a trial attorney. He always said, just get me to a jury. So employment cases, a lot of times your opportunity to get to a jury is taken away by arbitration agreements. Just general thoughts on, maybe you could let everybody know, what are arbitration agreements and why are they so devastating to a plaintiff's case sometimes?
Arbitration agreements are agreements where the plaintiff, the employee, is forced to waive their right to bring a case in court in front of a jury. And instead, the case is brought in a private setting in front of usually a retired judge or a lawyer who sometimes hasn't even done employment law. And so that's what arbitration is. So they are devastating to plaintiffs in employment cases because generally speaking, the plaintiffs' cases that do go to arbitration result in a far smaller award if the plaintiff does win than they normally would result in at trial. And that's the reason why defendants want them.
Absolutely.
Agreed. I mean, I think one of the things you run into here is no arbitrator wants to get a reputation for being too plaintiff friendly, because one of the good things about arbitration, to the extent there can be, is that the defendant has to bear the costs in an employment case beyond what an employee would pay in court. But that means the employers are paying for them, and they know that employers don't want to pay for arbitrators who are going to be too friendly to workers.
Well, the arbitrators make a lot of money off of that business, and many tens of thousands of dollars. And they, for many of them, especially retired judges, this is where they make the vast majority of the money that they actually earn during their career, is in those arbitrations, being paid by those employers and those corporations. And so they don't want that gravy train to stop, right? And they know that if they issue a significant award to the plaintiff, they won't get hired again.
That's correct. And we talked a little bit about like the effects that the Me Too movement could have on the publicity that it gets. You work on a lot of high profile cases. We do too, cases that get a lot of attention. What's the argument from the client's perspective of why publicity on a case is a good thing?
I do not have a one size fits all approach to publicity in cases, except that my approach is to talk to the client and inform them about what can happen when publicity is involved. And therefore, to try to marry the client's actual objectives with the case and their lives, their true objectives for their lives, with what can happen in publicity situations where cases are highly publicized. And then, pursue what is actually going to achieve the client's goals.
What are some of the biggest obstacles we still face with sexual harassment and the Me Too movement?
I think willingness to believe victims and, to get away from the victim shaming and blaming. And it still is not yet figured out. It still is happening. You probably heard recently in the past day or so that Harvey Weinstein's publicity team has been sending around a 57-page PowerPoint attacking each one of the victims who have come forward against him.
And he also is he's the biggest women's fighter to ever live, right?
According to him.
So it's the victim blaming. That's one of the big things. Anything else that you see as being a big issue in these cases or in the movement in general?
Well, I think just practically speaking, in the employment setting, the fact is that it is not difficult to avoid being the subject of a sexual harassment complaint. You just don't treat people in a way that is inappropriate and objectifying and explicitly sexual.
You mean just because you're an older male doesn't mean you're going to get sued for sexual harassment?
Yeah, that's correct. It does not mean that. It's a question of how does the perpetrator act? And then how does the company respond when the issue is brought to them?
That's a big one. What are the different ways that you both see companies responding to these actions and how their response determines how you deal with the case.
I mean, sometimes when you have a company that is more inclined towards resolution, you're more likely to approach that early with the company and try to work out something that can work for everyone, as opposed to where a defendant expresses a completely recalcitrant attitude and you realize very quickly that settlement isn't possible. It makes the case a lot more contentious and really can be the difference between a case that resolves quietly and quickly and one that goes on for years.
It's kind of like the Donald Trump versus like Al Franken thing. So how, like, you know, Al Franken basically acknowledges, hey, I did something wrong. Donald Trump deny. How do you deal with those two different types of characters?
Well, what I tell my advice to companies is, listen, the fact of the matter is the victims who come to me, they actually tried really hard to avoid having to come to a lawyer. They've tried asking for help in the workplace. They've tried letting it roll off their backs. And so they've tried to avoid this, confrontation, right? And so if employers will just listen and credit what employees are saying and work towards resolving a conflict or a dispute internally, right? And make people feel valued, then people are just going to want to go on with their lives.
So true. Why do we have hope? Why do we have hope? Is it because we have fighters like us? Where's the hope in all this?
Yes, because we have fighters like us, because they're human beings representing human beings, and we still have individual rights in this country. And we have a civil justice system, which is one of the most powerful experiences I have ever had, trying a case, getting a plaintiff's verdict. I call it an instantaneous dignity deposit. It's a transfer of dignity that goes instantaneously from the jury to the plaintiff, telling them you were right and they were wrong. The defendant was wrong. It shouldn't have happened to you. And it is instantly healing, and it is an incredibly powerful experience.
Lewis, give us your deal of the week.
Embrace your weirdness. No matter what you think there about yourself, there are people who appreciate you for exactly who you are.
So on point. Genie, what is your deal of the week?
Playing off of what Lewis said, I agree so much, but it is embrace the potential for failure, because from failure, we grow and learn, and we hone ourselves. Failure is not something to be afraid of and to avoid at all costs. And I want to recommend a fantastic book on that called Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K.
That will go into my Audible right away. Speaking of Audible, I consider myself to be somewhat of a negotiating expert. I love it. It's an art form. It's not a science. I just love it. But I'm always trying to improve, figure out ways to do it better. And negotiating isn't just what you think of, like, oh, I want more money than they're offering right now. Negotiating is, in my opinion, it's how you deal with life, personal life, professional life, and just everything. And it's sometimes negotiating could have a negative connotation. I don't view it like that. And I recommend this book called Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It. It's a he's the former international hostage negotiator on behalf of the FBI. He goes in and he gives you explanations of how he went in with all the Boston, Harvard guys, and they were going to outmaneuver him, and he bodied them like right away. He just like, he was trying to, I don't remember the scenario, but it was basically like they walked in very smug and they were going to rock him, and he just tore him apart immediately. And so the guy's got a lot of gravitas and just an amazing way of looking at the whole negotiation thing. So go check it out. There's a law firm named Smith & Benowitz. I've heard of these guys. Very cool guys. They actually sponsor this segment. It's called the Legal Tip of the Week. They do employment, personal injury, class actions, and we appreciate them very much. So thank you. Lewis, what is your legal tip of the week?
If you believe you're being illegally harassed or discriminated against at work, it's illegal for your employer to retaliate against you for complaining about it in good faith. So there may be times where it could be hard to prove the first bad thing that happened to you, but if you complain about it and create a trail and then something bad happens to you, you can still vindicate your rights because it's often easier to prove retaliation than the underlying discrimination.
Genie, what is your legal tip of the week?
If you feel like you're being sexually harassed at work, you probably are. You're not crazy. And you should keep a chronology, either write it down on your laptop, not your work laptop. So you need to do all of this at home.
Definitely not your work laptop.
Yeah, you didn't need to do all of this at home. Or you can use an app to record the incidents. And I created one. It's called Incident Genie. So you can use that as well.
Where's that? Where can we find that?
You can find that on the App Store. And then also for Android devices, it's available. It's free.
Awesome. Okay. So you have the right to be free from sexual harassment, not just in your employment situation, but in any professional setting. So that means your doctor can't sexually harass you, your lawyer, your agent, your landlord, your teacher, your psychiatrist. In a professional setting, it is unlawful to sexually harass you. So it's not just in an employment situation. Okay, Genie, you're a hero for victims. We really appreciate you taking the time to come here and talk about everything that you're up to. I'm really looking forward to hopefully working with you. And we really appreciate you coming here and informing the audience of what you're about and who you represent. And just thank you so much. Could you let us know where we could find you online?
Yes, you can find me at genieharrisonlaw.com. And Genie is spelled Genie. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks to both of you for the work that you do that's so important for society. And thanks for having this really cool podcast.
Thank you so much. We're so blessed to have you. And all that we ask is that you continue doing the work that you do. Next week is going to be great. We have Cliff Weitzman. He is Forbes 30 under 30. He's a young dude, went to Brown. He is an inspirational character. We're looking forward to having him on the show. We'll see you next week.
Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
Okay, so Ariane, they're asking where they could find us. So for Law Flip, it's at Law Flip and lawflip.com. For Smith & Benowitz, our law firm, which does personal injury, employment, and class actions, you can find us at Smith Benowitz and smithbenowitz.com. For the personal stuff, like where you're really going to find the juicy stuff, at Benji Smith and benjismith.com. At Wages Guru and lewisbenowitz.com for Lewis. Oh, so Law Flip is produced, directed, and edited by the young legend Arian Tabibian. Visual effects and compositions by another young legend, Oren Azad. Intro music provided by Pen Practice. Pen Practice, what is it? Premium instrumentals for upcoming artists by the music industry's top producers. For more info, visit penpracticemusic.com. I had so much fun recording the intro song with my man Hilton Deuce Wright. Looking forward to hearing more and more from Pen Practice. So the Law Flip identity, this hot logo that you're looking at, created by Garrett Whiston and Travis Nagel. Special thank you to Shai and Seth from the Horwitz Marketing Agency. A huge thank you to Aaron and Vanessa from Smith & Benowitz for endlessly dealing with all of our podcast bullshit. And lastly, a huge thank you to our beautiful wives, Julie and Lisa, for supporting our vision, and all the love to all of our four boys combined. Disclaimer, this podcast is made available by Smith & Benowitz for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is only intended to provide general information and opinions about legal and other concepts, and is not intended to be used as a source of legal advice or relied on for legal advice. By listening to this podcast, you understand that no attorney-client relationship is being formed between you and Smith & Benowitz or any of its attorneys. This podcast should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a licensed professional attorney in your state.